Hey!
This is JJ and Alex.
I made a name for myself. I told you I won't be denied.
As you wrap up your day, it's time to get your fix of the teams you live for and the sports you love. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
You hear that sick beat, you know what time it is. JJ and Alex, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. We kick off the 3 o'clock hour on a busy Monday. Hope you're all enjoying your Monday. Jeremiah Jensen, Alex Kirry's out today. Stevenson Sylvester is here in studio. Stevenson Sylvester, Utah great, former Pittsburgh Steeler, and he is our guest host today. Sly.
Hey, yo.
Always a pleasure. Great to have you here. And it's a good day to have a Ute in the building because we've got some massive news involving the University of Utah we're going to break out today. Alex, do we need to play the breaking news sounder? It's broke 2 hours ago. Oh, gosh. Did we miss the buzzer? Too little, too late?
I think we should just do it.
Okay.
There
That
we
makes
go.
me feel better. I want my chance to do breaking news. All right. Here's the breaking news. Utah is parting ways with head men's basketball coach Craig Smith. Craig Smith is out at the University of Utah, effective immediately. Josh Eilert becomes the interim head coach. He was the interim head coach at West Virginia last season, where he was an assistant for Bob Huggins after he was let go from that program. So after 4 years, Craig Smith, his time is up. 2 years left on his contract. Looks like they found a way to buy that out. And I believe they owe him around $5 million. So the timing, Sly, on this one is interesting. There's a lot to get into with this situation. I've got a statement from Mark Harlan as well. We'll get to that and more next. It's also tough when BYU and Utah State are thriving and Utah is not. So I'm sure the success of both of those programs probably also played a role in this. Former Utah basketball great and All-American Josh Grant will join us at 3:30. Obviously, he's well connected in the program and can give us some insight on this situation and also talk about what could be coming next for Utah basketball. And Steve Bartle will join us in the 5 o'clock hour on this story to go more in depth. And also, he's got a list of potential replacements for Craig Smith that we'll go through and discuss as well. So a lot to get to today, and it's not just that. We've got the latest on the Utah Jazz. They've got a game tonight. They're hosting the Portland Trailblazers. So we'll get into that. And the Utah Hockey Club pulled off a big win last night, a huge win to keep them alive in that race for that final Western Conference wild card spot. We'll got Cole Bagley coming up at 4 o'clock to relive that great moment last night and that great win. So a lot of fun things to get to today. It's not all doom and gloom. It's always sad to report the firing of a head coach, but it is part of the business, and that's how it goes. So we've got one to get into today. All of this is brought to you by G2G Bars with all natural ingredients, no preservatives, and plenty of protein. G2G Bars are perfect for anyone who needs a tasty and nutritious boost. Craig Smith out as the head coach of Utah basketball is a cut at 3 o'clock.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This hour also brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Give Trajan Wealth a call today, your local financial fiduciary, 801-899-7600, or visit their website at trajanwealth.com. Okay, Craig Smith, who took over the program in 2021, he had improved year over year until this season. And Sly, we knew that coming into the Big 12 was going to be tough. A new league, one of the best leagues in the country. 9 Big 12 teams went to the tournament last year. They're going to get probably 8 this year. They were picked to finish 16th, but they were right in the middle of the pack. And until Sunday's loss, that was Sunday at UCF, they were coming off wins over Kansas and Kansas State at home. And had they won, they would have been 500 in conference play. So I don't know that it was Sunday's loss that was the reason for this. I think that this was probably in the works before. There's no way you're going to go that reactive over a loss on the road in Big 12 play against a team that, while they're not in the top of the standings, has got some talent and has some decent wins this year. Something else is in play here about the timing, and I don't know what that is. I'm not privy to that information. I don't know. But what we do have is a statement from Athletics Director Mark Harlan regarding Craig Smith, and I will read that now. He said, quote, "I want to thank Craig for his work and commitment since he arrived in Salt Lake City. He has led us to special moments and memorable victories, and Craig has poured his heart into building our current team. However, we have greater aspirations for our men's basketball program, both within the Big 12 Conference and nationally. And our expectation is to regularly compete in the NCAA tournament. After evaluating our program under Craig's leadership, I believe a change is needed to get us to where we want to go. The time is now to begin that process, and we will surround Coach Eilert, the staff, and our student athletes with support as they continue with their season. We have continued to invest in our men's basketball program, adding staff, increasing compensation, and significantly enhancing NIL opportunities with our partners for our student athletes. And our investments will only grow. I am confident that our national search, which has already begun, will lead us to the right coach to take our storied program back to national prominence. We wish Craig and his family the very best," unquote. All right, Sly, I want to get your reaction first, and then I'll share some things that stick out to me about what might be the reason for the timing and where they want to go next.
Yeah, I mean, one, I never understand that. Never understand the timing of things like that, especially this one, right? There's 4 games left in the season. You go and play Arizona here on Wednesday. Wouldn't you like your head coach who's been around the team there's 4 games left. The season's already whatever it's going to be.
Right.
You think your assistant interim coach is going to do better in the last 4 games than the head coach? That's crazy.
Why don't you do this in Vegas after the Big 12? Oh, no, sorry, in Kansas City now. I have to switch gears with the Utes. Kansas City after the Big 12 tournament. Why don't you wait until the actual end of the season to do this?
Yeah, I mean,
that's the first question I have.
That to me is just crazy. I don't know if you're trying to make a splash or something like that. But first things first. First of all, Utah was picked last, right?
Yeah,
We're supposed
16th.
to finish last,
Dead
right?
last.
And they're not last, right? They're doing actually better than the football team did in the conference. And I just don't get it. It's troubling to me because it's like, these guys, Craig Smith is kind of victim to what other schools are doing and in the surrounding community. What Utah State and BYU is doing, Craig Smith is subjected to that, unfortunately. Crazily, this is just the first year in the Big 12, and you're having to do this. I think this decision was in the frameworks even before the season started. This whole offseason, they were kind of thinking about this. The ways the season has started, that 4-game losing streak earlier in the season, and then just how things have trajected. I think that, they have had this they've been wanting to do this for a while, but towards the end of the season when there's only 4 games left, that doesn't make sense to me. But again, I've never been in those positions unless they already have somebody who they want to hire and announce. And there's always something with marketing too, right? When I announce things, when I do things, that all factors in. So yeah, that's huge. But for me, I just don't understand why not waiting till after the Big 12 tournament.
Only Mark Harlan could answer that question, and at some point maybe he can. Doesn't matter. What's done is done.
Right.
The change has been made. Now, I don't disagree with the change. I have to be quite honest. I never would advocate or say somebody needs to be fired over the radio or TV. I don't think that's okay.
Right.
But if I'm being objective and I'm looking at this and I'm looking at that program, what that program is and what it's supposed to be, and I see what has been accomplished over the last 4 years, not good enough. It's not good enough. They have not been to the NCAA tournament under Craig Smith. And he did that at Utah State, and I believe Mark Harlan hired him because he thought Craig Smith could do at Utah what he did at Utah State. That's why he gave him the money he did and the long-term contract he did.
Right.
This is not somebody you hired last year, 2 years ago. This is the 4th year of a 6-year contract.
And then, I also hate that too because people always want to judge Mark Harlan. Like, why'd you hire this guy? He's like, you don't know what projections are going to be. It's kind of like, you get a player, right? You don't know if the player's going to be crap on your team or not. Like, you're projecting him to be great. He had great success at Utah State. He has a great mind. Hopefully at the University of Utah, you have a little bit more resources to be able to get good recruiting. And it just didn't pan out, right? And so Mark Harlan, being the decision maker that he is, I got to cut my losses, sooner than later. And in this great conference is historically known for its great basketball between Kansas, Kansas State, Houston, Arizona, all these great schools. I got to be able to compete every year. And if we're going to be subpar and pick last in the conference every single time, we're just not doing it.
You have to be honest about what the University of Utah basketball program has been and what people who support it, especially financially,
right.
I'm talking about boosters,
right.
believe it should be. You've got a very proud alumni there. We can go on and on about the legends that have played for that program. Mm-hmm. And it's fallen short of that legendary status over the last decade. When was the last time the Utes made the NCAA tournament? 9 years ago.
Is that
9 years. 2016. That was the year of Jakob Pertl's last year.
Yeah.
And obviously Kyle Kuzma was on that team. It was the year after. DeLon Wright was on the 2015 team that went to the Sweet 16 under Larry Kraskowiak. That 2016 team lost to Gonzaga and Domantas Sabonis in the round of 32 in Denver. I was there in 2016. You have to start, as you go look through the times of this program, that's the longest stretch of 9 years. I'm going through real quickly. I'm doing this on the fly. The last time they went 9 or more years without an NCAA tournament appearance, you got to go back to 1977.
Oh, yeah.
So after 1966, they went to the Final Four. They didn't make it back to the NCAA tournament again until 1977. And that's not in the era of the round of 64 teams. In the era of 64 teams, they had never gone this long without making the NCAA tournament. This is Utah basketball.
Right. The running Utes.
This at one point in time, I don't know if they still are, top 10 all time in wins. I mean, they were as close to being a blue blood over that period of time as you can without being one.
Right.
They were mentioned along the likes of North Carolina and Kansas and Duke when it comes to wins in NCAA tournaments and wins overall.
Yeah.
There's a proud history here.
Well, for sure. I mean, when I've talked to people in the community, I think that's been one of the high marks of disappointment for fans. It's like, I just can't believe our basketball team is just this bad year in and year out.
And people aren't even angry about it. They're indifferent. They've given up on it. They're just moved on to other things. People are just indifferent about the program. Utah fans, and there's some going to disagree with me here. I think there's some hardcore fans that don't like where things are or have been frustrated, or there may be a few that have hope that things are going to get where they needed to go. But if you're going to look at it objectively, there's just been a lot of checkout with a lot of Utah fans when it comes to basketball. I think there's been more interest and enthusiasm about women's basketball at Utah, which is great because they've earned it.
Yeah,
that program has earned it. Lynn Robish did a great job building that program. It wasn't overnight, but they turned it into a winner. There's been more interest and been more excitement surrounding that program than the men's program. And that's why you look at the current situation, you go, you know what? We got to make a change. Now, do you make a change, like you say, with 4 games left in the regular season? I don't know. Mark Harlan, the decision was made. We don't know everything that happened in those rooms. We don't know all that. So I can't judge that. I don't know. They made the decision today.
Right.
So based on my objective view of it, it's the right decision because the program is falling short of its history and expectation. You can't go 9 years missing the NCAA tournament at Utah. You can't do it. You can't do it. That's a program with the history and the resources, the alumni, and everything they have at their fingertips should be making the tournament at least every other year.
Yeah, for me as a fan, as an alumni, I love the standard that we have for all of our sports teams, right? You know, we got to be the best. If we're falling short of that, we're failing. And so that's good. I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm just like, you know, there's some other schools that would be happy with a 15-12 record, right? It's above 500. We're middle of the pack. We're not the worst. Like, they would be like, all right, we're doing good. But that is just below the Utah standard. And we understand that. So I love, as a former player, a former athlete, an alumni, somebody who cares about the University of Utah, I love that Utah wants to hold itself to that standard, and its fans too. We hold ourselves to being great year in and year out.
I think there's two other things that have caused this decision to be made. Obviously, we talked about the performance is not up. You got to make the tournament, Utah. But NIL, who's making headlines right now with their NIL payments and their recruiting?
BYU. I don't want to say their names.
You said it. I got to give you credit. I got to give you credit. I got to give you credit.
No.
And Alex, we know this is in there somewhere.
No, I don't.
You
like
recently said.
I don't remember
it was
that.
even before the season started.
I don't remember that.
You
at all.
recognized that something special was brewing down in Provo. Even
I actually
you
love the promise of BYU basketball.
That's right.
Oh, gosh.
You saw this coming. You know something's brewing down in Provo.
Yeah. I mean,
and Utah's having to deal with it, because if you're a Utah fan and you're watching what BYU's doing, you're saying, that's what we should be doing. We're not. How are they getting A.J. DeBonsa? How did they get Yegor Demon?
Right.
How is BYU beating Arizona in Tucson? Utah fan wakes up this morning and BYU's in the top 25.
How about that?
BYU's ranked 25th in the nation today. And for good reason.
Yeah.
They kicked Kansas' butt by 34 points. They just won at the McHale Center. You know how hard it is to win in Tucson? That's a good Arizona team, and BYU found a way. Was it a questionable call at the end? Sure. It was called. What do you want? Saunders made the free throws. He had to make the free throws, and he made them. They won the game. Just as their coach, Tommy Lloyd, said after the game, it was a bad call, but we let BYU score 96 in our house.
Right.
They let BYU score 90. And BYU was good enough to go down to Tucson and score 96 in their house. And if you're a Utah fan today, you see that. And you see BYU in the top 25. And you see BYU's getting A.J. DeBonsa. And they're getting lottery picks. That used to be you.
Yeah.
You used to get the Andre Millers and the Keith Van Horns and the Jakob Pertles and the DeLon Wrights and the Kyle Kuzmas. That used to be you.
Right.
And it's not anymore. And you wake up to this headline, you're like, okay, it looks like somebody up there finally gets it. Like, this is not acceptable. And trust me, I'm certain that there are boosters that maybe that's why the timing was now, because the boosters, somebody with the cash for a buyout finally said, okay, BYU's in the top 25?
Absolutely not.
I'm writing a check. I can't do this anymore.
Mark, make the announcement now.
I got a 7-figure check. I'll write it today. Mark, make the change.
Yeah.
Because you combine. We haven't mentioned the Aggies. Utah State, where Craig Smith used to coach. He was part of the success. They've had 4 coaches in 7 years. They've had all kinds of turnover with players. But you know what hasn't stopped? The winning.
Yeah.
One of the hardest places to play in the country. The spectrum is packed. The fans are into it. It doesn't matter what players they bring in. They become stars. And they win. They just won an NCAA tournament game last year. And they're going to be good enough to do it again this year. They're 24-4. Utah State is. And Utah fans like, why can't we do that?
Yeah. What about me?
So you've got the performance on the court and the history not good enough. That's not met. They're not competing at that level of NIL that they have to win in the Big 12. That's obvious. And BYU and Utah State are absolute juggernauts right now, and you're not. And you look at the situation if you're a Utah fan, and yeah, no wonder you have apathy. What hope do you have watching this right now? It doesn't feel good to be number 3 in the state.
No.
And Utah Valley's won 20 games this year. They're at number 1 in the WAC.
How about that?
So the Utah Valley Wolverines could make the NCAA tournament this year if they win their conference tournament, and Utah could be sitting home for the 9th straight year.
While the other 3 Utah schools.
While everyone else is having a March party. They're at the dance. They got invited. You're not. So you can see why this decision had to be made. This is a move that had to be made. Today, strange. I don't know why, but it had to be made. I get it. I understand it. And all those forces play a role in this. It certainly has an impact. And I'm actually glad for the University of Utah and for that basketball program because the apathy has to end. That's a sleeping giant. That should be a juggernaut. Because why? I've seen it in my lifetime. That program was one half away from a national championship in 1998. One half. They ran out of gas.
Right.
They just didn't have enough depth. But that Kentucky team, they were at the half of that game, in that national championship game, Utah was the better team at half. They just couldn't finish it. They went to Sweet 16s regularly. I've seen it. Even with Larry Kraskovia, I was there when they played Duke in the Sweet 16 in Houston. That wasn't that long ago, but then I looked down and I was like, that was 10 years ago. It's been a minute. Come on.
Time flies. I don't know if that's me getting older or like what, because I think things that were just yesterday are literally 8-9 years ago. Yeah.
But if you think about it, you can't go 9 years at Utah without making the
absolutely
tournament.
Not.
You
absolutely
can't.
Not.
And it costs money, but somebody decided it was worth it. And you're going to see change there. And I think the change is necessary, and it's going to be good. We'll see what that change is. We'll see who gets the job. But it was a change that had to be made for all the reasons I stated. This is not good enough. And you've got to build a program up there that people want to invest in. Mm-hmm. And I use that word specifically, invest, Sly. You know what the world is like in 2025 in college athletics. You need investors. And if they're going to compete with BYU and the other teams in the Big 12, and to some degree even Utah State for eyeballs and fans and everything else, you have to have investors. And I don't think they were getting enough with this current regime.
Yeah, Utah's got to shake some more hands and kiss some more babies, man. They gotta get the right people behind them and make the right decisions at the helm. As I said, every team, I think it starts from the top down. You go administration, coaching staff, and then to the players. You know, you got to have ownership and investment from the players as well, and it starts from the top, man. So, yeah, I agree. I think Utah has definitely missed the boat these last few years, 9 years since making the tournament. That's just disappointment after disappointment, and that's just not good. Your football team has had success, these past few years, and you guys have just been almost, fourth fiddle, right, within the Utah sports community? Like, that's
I think Utah fans would rather go watch a football game, a gymnastics meet, a Utah women's basketball game. The softball team has been in the NCAA tournament. I could go on and on about success up there that
baseball
hasn't been
team,
men's basketball.
Lacrosse team, yeah. And that's not what it's supposed to be. Utah is known for being the running Utes.
You used to be a basketball school.
Yes.
You are better than this, and they know it.
Yes.
And I'm glad they recognize it, and they're making that change. Again, if you're just joining us, Craig Smith is out as the head coach at Utah men's basketball. They're starting a national search. Josh Eilert will take over as the interim head coach. All right, we'll continue to discuss this story and much more. Coming up next, Josh Grant, former Utah Ute great. He'll have some great insight on this situation as they search for a new head coach. He can tell us a lot of things he knows about it and his opinions on it. He'll be our guest next right here on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. We'll be back after this. JJ and Alex, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Your home for the best coverage of the Jazz, Utes, and Cougars is right here on The Zone. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Oh, yeah.
I got to let that Led Zeppelin ride a little bit, Alex. That's a good Monday vibe. You got Sly over here lip syncing.
Man, I'm vibing, man.
Oh, yeah.
This is great music right here. Like, his voice is just...
Whole lot of love.
A whole lot of love. That don't get you jacked. I don't know what does.
Well, let's give a whole lot of love to our next guest. I'm excited to talk to Josh. Josh Grant, Utah Ute legend, joining us right now on JJ and Alex 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great, fellas. Good to be with you today.
It's good to have you, and not the greatest of circumstances. I don't like talking about firing. Like I mentioned earlier, I would never go on the radio and say someone should be fired, this and that, but it's a part of the business, and we're dealing with that today. I wanted to get your reaction to the...
You guys are too nice.
Then I'll let you be mean.
Yes, I don't know. I won't be mean. I don't want to be mean or disrespectful. I just want to be honest.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's hard because it's a person's livelihood, but Craig Smith is not going to starve. He's not going to be poor. It might hurt his ego a little bit, and understandably so. I have compassion for him. He's a nice man. He's always been a gentleman. But sometimes, it doesn't work out, and it's, to me, it might even be a couple of years too late. But I'm excited for the future, and I'm really excited of the possibilities, and yeah, I'm excited, and I'm happy to see some change.
Before we get into the future, and that is exciting because this is a program that should be doing better than it is. Why do you think this didn't work out, and what did you think of the timing of this decision?
Great questions. The first thing, why didn't it work out? And I've said this before, there's a very specific recipe that it takes to be successful in the state of Utah. For BYU, Utah, even the Utah Jazz to a certain degree. And if you don't understand what that recipe is, you can't be successful here. And Coach Whittingham understands it in football. That's why they've been successful. Rick Majerus understood it in basketball. I don't know that the coaches since Rick Majerus have understood it. And that is, you've got to be a really good teacher. You've got to get the right people here. You've got to get the people who want to be here, who are really proud to wear Utah on their uniform. Mm-hmm. They got to be coachable. And you've got to build a base of basically in-state players so that you can start to get some recognition because you play well together as a team. You play intelligently. You take care of the ball. You play hard. You play for one another. And then as you get better and that circle of influence grows, now you can start to go out and recruit some of these top-notch kids like Keith Van Horn, like Andre Miller, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure if you picked football, you could pick any number of guys that they went out and did that with. But it does take a specific recipe. You're not going to be able to compete against UCLA, Arizona, these schools out west that are big basketball programs. People in California dream of playing for UCLA. They don't dream of playing for the University of Utah. And so you've got to get guys who want to be here. You've got to coach them. You've got to teach them. And you've got to get them to fill a role. And I don't know that Craig knew that. And when people tried to help him to explain to him how it worked, I think he felt that, hey, I just coached at Utah State. I was pretty successful. I don't know what you're talking about. And I think that was really Craig's downfall, is he just didn't understand that part of it.
That's great, man. I love, there was a lot of things you said there that you could take out. And one, of course, the investment, being a great teacher, but also understanding that this is a good community. You can get some good players from the state of Utah, right? And so that's got to be first things first. And understanding that and that it's a team game, right? You can have great individuals, but can the guys play together? And then, of course, the influence and all of that stuff. But I want to know, what did you see from Craig Smith that was more of the coaching errors, right? Like, you could get players that weren't doing their jobs. I could see a lot of things where the guys just weren't playing. The scheme was there, the guys just weren't playing. But what did you see from Craig that was more of the issue these last few years?
I think the one thing that kind of bothered me the most is the way that we played a pick and roll. And every offense in the country wants to play the pick and roll because of the way or the influence of the NBA. And so they would play pick and roll, and they would have our big 7-footers out there. And our big 7-footers, they wouldn't really trap, and they didn't really protect the basket. They kind of got stuck in no man's land. And so they would attack that big guy. The point guard would come off that screen, attack that big guy. He wouldn't really play defense. He would continue to retreat, and either the point guard got to the foul line and shot a wide-open jump shot, or he would shoot it, and the big guy who was supposedly defended by our 7-footer would just tip dunk it. And so, to me, that's, there's a lot of different ways you can play a pick and roll, but if you're not stopping the offense, then maybe you need to change. And I felt that was the case a lot. If you looked at the way that Lohner played the pick and roll this year, he was very aggressive. He didn't let the point guard turn the corner, and, he played great defense. Well, he came from a good program out in Baylor. He understood what it was, how to win, how to stop that pick and roll. And so when you see things like that, I don't think you can just pick and choose and say, oh, okay, Loner, you're going to be the aggressive guy in the pick and roll, but you other guys, maybe we're going to let you just stay in the middle and protect the paint even though it wasn't successful. And so there's just a lot of fundamental things that as you're watching the games, you're thinking, everybody knows you don't help from the strong side. You look at the game against St. Mary. They ran a pick and roll. They came off the pick. We helped from the strong side. We pitched it to the corner. The guy's got a wide open three, knocks it down, and that's the ball game. That's you can't do that. It's about discipline, and it's about being the same. And, not only are you teaching, you got to teach these kids, but you got to hold them accountable. I'm pretty sure that if you were a defensive end and you blitzed and you let somebody beat you around the end, Whittingham was going to make sure you knew about it. There's just certain things you got to do. This is your job. If you do your job, you're going to help the team. If you try to go off and do your own thing, you're not going to help the team, even if you get a sack every now and again.
Right. And
so it's about discipline. It's about fulfilling the expectation that you have to fill as your specific role.
Man, I feel like he watched my game film and he knows that I did that.
was that a critique there?
That went straight to the core. I instantly remember Coach Whittingham and Kalani yelling at me.
Hey, we've all been in that film room, man. The film doesn't lie.
Yeah.
No, it does not. Josh, does it also impact things? Does it also create an impatience with boosters and people to support the program when you see BYU in the top 25, winning on the road at Arizona, getting the number 1 recruit in the country, and you see Utah State, despite this revolving door of coaches and players, once again at the top of the Mountain West with a 24-4 record? How much does that impact or magnify the failure at Utah?
I think you've asked like 5 questions there, so let me try to see if I can put them all together.
There's so much to unpack here.
No, it is. There's a lot to unpack. But first, let me tell you my view Utah State. I have 2 brothers that played at Utah State. One was a 6'7" post guy, and the other was a 6'5" guy who wasn't especially quick, but he was just tough, hard-nosed. Those are the kind of guys that go to Utah State, and they feel like they have a chip on their shoulder. They've got to prove to the world that Utah and BYU really cheated them by not recruiting them, and they have something to prove, and so they've got this anger issue, and so they go up to Utah State and they play and they want to prove to the world I am better than what everybody thinks. So you have that mentality at Utah State. So to me, that's completely different than the attitude of many of the players that come to Utah. So I'm kind of happy for Utah State. They've got new coaches that come in. All he has to do is give them a good direction, and those dogs just go out and they hunt. And they're aggressive and they're tough. And I'm not taking anything away from the coach. I think he does a great job with his his matchup zone up there. He gets them to play together. They move the ball well. The right people are shooting. The right people are rebounding. The right people are playing defense, etc. So they do a great job. BYU has stepped into a new zone. We always have known that BYU has had more money than us. Now they just have openly said, we are not going to be outbid by anybody. So now they're in the category of like a UCLA, Arizona, Oregon kind of thing. If they're going to have that attitude with NIL money, we should not try to compete with that because we can't.
That's never been Utah, though.
Yeah.
No, it hasn't. That's
right.
Exactly right. We need to compete the way that the University of Utah competes, and that is we play smart. We hire or we recruit local kids because there are plenty of good kids here in the state of Utah. You don't need to go to California and forget everybody here. There is at least 5 kids in the state every year who can fill a role of some kind on a high Division I level team. Maybe not as a freshman, possibly not as a sophomore, but as a junior, absolutely. And they are not going to transfer because the coach scolds them because they went under a screen. They're not going to jump in the transfer portal and run away. They love Utah and they want to be here. And those are the kids that we want to get. And those are the kids that we want to teach. And those are the kids who, when they go to church on Sunday, everybody thinks they're great because they're the hometown hero. And those are the kids that we need to appeal to. And those are the kids that will stick around. And that's who the new coach is going to have to go after, is those kids, to build a program on using those kids who are happy to be here. They've been watching the Utes since they were little. They went to the games. They love Utah. And I think that's kind of the setup that we need to go after.
So now it's time to look ahead. This is a great opportunity for this program to do exactly what you're talking about. Where should they turn?
There's one name. to me, there's one name, and if they look at anybody else, it's only because the one name said no, not once, not twice, not 3 times. So it may be the 4th time.
Go get him.
They need to recruit the heck out of Alex Jensen.
Yep.
Nobody else. I mean, I hear arguments about, oh, this guy, that guy, this guy's in the NBA, that guy's done this, that guy has done that. There's nobody out there who has experience working with Rick Majerus, who understood basketball and could teach basketball as well as anybody in the country. He understands that. He understands how Utah works. He understands the psychology of basketball. He understands how to get guys to play in the NBA. He understands basketball, which is good. He understands discipline. He understands defense. He understands the importance of playing together. He can coach that. He can teach that. I don't know that there's too many other people that get all those things that would want this job. I mean, I might want it, and I think I have those qualities, but that's a story for a different day.
You're going to advocate for yourself here. Then put your name in the hat.
Yeah. Get your resume ready. They're hiring.
No, but Alex is the guy for sure, and I hope and I believe it will happen. That's where the focus needs to be. That's where everybody needs to put their attention. That's what needs to happen.
Do you think Alex is ready? Because I know they've tested those waters before, and life in the NBA is certainly different than having to deal with the college kids. Is he finally ready to make that jump back?
I don't know that if things were done differently, if that wouldn't have happened the last time they tested the water. It's just the circumstances were a little bit different. I don't think those same circumstances exist right now. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, what person does not or would not be excited to come home and be a hometown hero to turn a program around?
Man,
I think you got to be a little crazy for that.
Yeah, you do. And I think Alex has a resume that the players will respect.
He has an incredible resume. There's no doubt about that.
Coaching NBA teams to being part of USA Basketball, he has one that, I think the players would respect. I think that's huge, right? It's kind of like your parents, right? Like, you don't always listen to your parents, but you're going to listen to that athlete that you've seen on TV or somebody else say the exact same thing your parents are saying.
He's been coaching Luka Doncic until that trade took place. Right. He's in the Mavericks locker room. He was in the Jazz locker room. The guy knows the NBA. Right.
He's also a good coach. I mean, he was the coach of the year in the D League.
Yep.
I mean, he's got plenty of experience, no question about it. And here's the thing, and people don't typically understand this. Rick Majerus ruined basketball for all of his players, and not in a negative way. I mean, while we were playing, he ruined it, yes, because he was so hard. But what he did is he taught us such good fundamentals and how it's supposed to work, and it is so simple that when you see things that don't work, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and say, why aren't they doing it the right way?
Right.
And so Alex was with Rick. He understands the right way. He also understands the importance of teaching. You got to teach kids, then you got to hold them accountable, and then, they got to fit their roles and everybody plays together as a team and so on. But Alex and his experience has those things. And that's why, take Jimmy Soto, take Craig Rideouts, take, Jeff Johnson, take these guys, take Andre Miller, guys who played for Rick. I would put them up against 90% of the other coaches in the country, and I believe that they would do a better job than most of them.
Man,
because they understand basketball. They understand the importance of teaching it and principles and doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I love that the standard that Majerus has said is instilled in those guys and what it should be. And along those lines, it's like, give me your impression on what this program should be, right? Like me as the football alumni of University of Utah, I have an impression on what I think Utah football should be. As we were just talking about, of homegrown, tough defense, disciplined guys, what should this program be that Utah fans and the rest of the conference and the nation should be able to see or expect when they're playing the Running Utes?
Well, the first thing is, and I know you're younger than me, so I can say this, this is a basketball school. It's changed. Everybody thinks it's a football school, but the University of Utah is a basketball school. We have just played so poorly over the last 20 years that people forgot that. So that's the first standard, is we need to be competing with the football program for the attention of our own fan base. There's no way that we can have such a good fan base at football, and then you go up to a basketball game and you got 3,000 people there. I mean, back when we actually had a good product here, we would play the worst team in the conference, and the Huntsman Center was full. It didn't matter. People wanted to come because it was a good product. And the customers are always right. And in this case, the customers are the fans. And if fans aren't coming, you're doing something wrong. And so that's another reason why I believe Alex is the guy. You watch, if they hire Alex, within a week, the number of ticket sales will increase dramatically. Just because they know Alex, they feel connected to Alex, they remember his days as a player, they want to come and see if he can do what Rick did. And so that's the starting point for me. But to me, what do I expect? I expect the players to understand their roles. I expect them to play smart. I expect them to play hard, and I expect them to play together. And typically that means that you might play against somebody who's a lot more athletic than you, but you shut them down because you play together, you play great defense, you rebound, you take care of the ball on the other end. And if you miss shots, it's still going to be a close game because you're making them miss shots on the other end. And that's kind of what I expect, just to do things the right way. You play a pick and roll a certain way. You have a defensive scheme that you follow. You don't just kind of say, "Oh, I had a breakdown." No, breakdowns are unacceptable. And after a while, I'm sure you understood that. You know, you had a job on defense. If you didn't do your job and you had a breakdown and you were a senior, I'm sure that people were looking out of the side of their face mask at you saying, "Hey, do your job." So and I think that we have a high basketball IQ here in the state of Utah. We've got a gym on just about every corner. And so people understand basketball. They love basketball. They recognize good basketball. So fundamentals, it's all about fundamentals and teamwork. Do you take care of the ball? Do you set good screens? Do you even know what a screen is? There were times Gabe Mattson, if I was the coach, Gabe Mattson would have had wide open jump shots, but he didn't ever come off a screen the way he was supposed to. So to me, that's a coaching issue. With Rick, you better come off a screen, right, or you are going to do it again. And if you messed up the second time, you might be touching every floor or every stair in the Huntsman Center. You better do what you're taught, and that's part of the expectation. And I think that all of the former players, basketball players up here, kind of have a similar expectation. We like to win. We used to win. What's going on here? Right. And you win by sticking to the fundamentals, playing good team basketball, playing hard, and taking care of the ball.
Josh, this has been great. I know that Utah fans listening right now loved every second of what you just said and agree with you 100% because this is the change that needs to be made. 9 years without NCAA tournament appearance is unacceptable. So thanks so much for joining us. We'll do this again soon as the coaching hire continues, but can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me come on, guys. Really appreciate it.
You got it. That's Josh Grant, Utah Ute great, giving us his 2 cents, and that was dead on with everything. That's somebody who knows the in and outs of that program.
For sure.
Who cares about that program.
I think he understands University of Utah because that's what the football team needs to be taking.
That's why I wanted to hear Josh today because that's
exactly how I feel about how the football team needs to be looking at everything.
This reminds me of Utah football back in the 70s and 80s. Like that program was great in the 50s and the 60s. And then there was this dry period in the 70s and 80s when it was bad and people just stopped caring about it. Right. And that took the right guy to bring that back. Right. And it was somebody who knew about the 50s and 60s, and that was Ron McBride. Right. He brought the program back up, and it's where it is today. Another revival is needed for this basketball program. It's been 2 decades of not good enough. And Josh is right. They need to bring in the right guy to change it. We'll see if it's Alex Jensen. We'll see if it's somebody else. But he said a lot of great stuff there. And if you missed any of that, you can go back and listen to it. It should be up online on YouTube and anywhere else you can find it on KSLSports.com soon. All right. Don't miss your chance to win big every week on the KSL Sports Zone. This week on Win Ticket Wednesday, you can win a 4-pack of tickets to the Salt Lake Off-Road Expo. February 28th, March 1st is when it's going to be taking place at the Mountain America Expo Center. Listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day on Wednesday for your chance to win. You don't want to miss. Slorex will be there on Friday. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Weekend Warriors next on JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and and gentlemen,
The biggest name. You're locked into JJ and Alex. With the insight and analysis on the teams you can't live without. Presented by G2G Bars. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Weekend Warriors is brought to you by Gillette Heating and Air. Right now, get seasonal maintenance done on your furnace for only $59. See GilletteHVAC.com to make an appointment. We're going to make this real quick. We'll save the hockey guys for the next segment. Keontae George scored 30 points against the Rockets off the bench. The Jazz aren't supposed to win games. Come on, Keontae.
Keontae to the near side with a meter running at 28 points. Crosses over Jabari Smith, rises to the rack, lays it up and in, give the man 30 and ring the bell.
Keontae George playing well off the bench. And how about Richie Saunders coming up clutch? 23 points in the Cougars win over Arizona on Saturday night. And now they're in the top 25, and Richie Saunders hit some clutch free throws to get the victory.
They get one more. One more make might do it. Right corner, Richie will drive the base, gets right to the rim, reverse lay-in. Good! And the foul! And the foul! And the foul. A chance for a three-point play by Richie Saunders. Throws it into forecourt. Oh, Saunders, gonna win Saunders it. With two and with one into the air. The clock expires! That's it! And BYU has won it by a score of 96-95.
Cougars red hot, now ranked in the top 25, coming off wins over Kansas and Arizona. Wow, what a time to be a BYU fan. All right, we're got more Utah Hockey Club next. Cole Bagley is going to join us to discuss a big win last night, where they're at in the playoff race, and what we can look ahead to next on JJ and Alex 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
accessing.
When TV and radio collide.
Love it.
Wow. This is what you get. You're listening to JJ and Alex. Presented by G2G Bars.
Don't touch that dial.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. With complete coverage of the Utah Hockey Club, this is Cole Bagley of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
We roll into the 4 o'clock hour here on JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're going to get it started with some hockey, some NHL hockey. The Utah Hockey Club coming up with a big win last night over the Vancouver Canucks to keep their playoff hopes moving in the right direction. Jeremiah Jensen, Stevenson Sylvester with you today. And joining us now is Cole Bagley at the cut at 4 o'clock.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Cut's brought to you by Doug Smith Dealerships, Dodge, Ram, Chevrolet, Subaru, Kia in Linden, and now Mitsubishi in American Ford. Cole Bagley, Utah Hockey Club insider for KSLSports.com, is joining us live. Cole, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm doing well, and Utah Hockey Club is doing really well. That was a big win last night. Can you put into words how big that was for this team?
Yeah, that was the biggest win of the season so far. And, it's pretty much every win over the last week or so in terms of the season has been the biggest game of the year. And, last night they followed it up with a absolute must win over the Vancouver Canucks at home to climb in the standings. And, that was a game, a head-to-head matchup that they simply had to have because it was technically a 4-point swing. They were, back by about 6 points. They picked up 2, so they stepped up to 4. And rather than jumping down to 8, which really would have been arguably a death sentence at this point, they grinded out a big win. That was a game that they came down to a single goal. They've lost a lot of those games this season that have been one-shot games, one-goal games. A lot of those matchups that have gone into the third periods tied or into overtime and whatnot, they've come out in the losing end. So, to come out on the winning end recently and at a critical time was huge for this club.
A lot to unpack about that game last night. I thought in the early going, Karel Vejmelka was key, and he just continues to be great. How important was his contribution last night as it's been all season?
Yeah, 93% save percentage. Doesn't really get much better than that in the National Hockey League. Vejmelka has been huge so many times this season for the Utah Hockey Club. A lot of their big wins have come, with him between the pipes, critical saves. Last night he had one or two absolutely pivotal saves in the game. They kept the team in it. Like I said, when your goaltender is stopping upwards of, almost 95% of the shots, you're going to win 9 out of 10 times. And I think it's almost one of those performances that I think gets overlooked just based on, there's a lot of big storylines last night. You had Dursey playing his first home game since the home opener in October. You had Logan Cooley back for the first time in a month. Cooley gets on the board. Dylan Guenther continues to stay hot, scores the game winner. But Vejmelka was just as critical, just as important, as each of those guys, stopping 14 out of 15 shots and making sure that he did everything in his power to help the team get a win.
Man, do you think that there's a kind of comfortability going on right now? I watched the game last night, and like the guys seemed like they were just honing in. They're gelling. You said there was a couple guys that haven't played since early on in the season, but coming together, I thought they did great, right? Like they were down 0-1, heading into the third, and they were able to come back and make that win. But it sounded like a very sound confidence. There wasn't nothing like they lost confidence throughout the game, because it was a very back and forth game. As you know, these guys are both vying for this wild card spot. And is there a comfortability with this team right now where they're kind of gelling at the right time?
Yeah, I think more so in terms of health. This is the healthiest we've ever seen the Utah Hockey Club. Was the game last night. They've got everybody back, right? They were without Guenther for a while. They were without Cooley for a while. They were without Dursey for, the vast majority of the season. They were missing Marino for a time. Mm-hmm. So to have this team at arguably 100% at this point is huge. They were probably the team that benefited the most from the Four Nations break. Is it gave Dursey a little bit extra time to get fully ready. It gave Cooley an extra week and a half to get healthy. Playing without those types of guys, it makes it more difficult to win. So to have those two come back in and to make an impact, Cooley scoring a goal after missing a month and playing the way that he did, was he the best that he's ever been? No, but the fact that you're getting a goal out of a guy like Cooley when he's not, quite at his best is just speaks to the volumes of the type of player that he is. And then Sean Dursey has come in, and he's playing like he didn't miss 4.5 months. He's coming in with an unbelievable energy. He's feisty. He's getting involved on the rush. He's generating opportunities offensively. He's playing very, very well defensively. So, yeah, I think that they're as healthy as they've ever been. And are they playing at, their maximum potential? No, they're not yet. But that's good in terms of, hey, this team can still get better, and we're coming down a critical stretch where they need to be at their best. So to have a team fully healthy and to still be growing towards, reaching their maximum potential, it's very exciting at a time where there's not a lot of hockey left to be played. Every game is a big game, and there's about 5 or 6 teams all within about a 5-6 point difference that are battling to make the playoffs.
We've had a lot of conversations about these young stars on this team, Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther, and you had a must-win game last night. I think we'd agree with that if they wanted to really make a run at this, and you had those guys step up. What does it say about Cooley and Guenther, their talent, and also at this point in their career, their ability to come up with big plays when they need them?
Yeah, I had a really good conversation this week with General Manager Bill Armstrong, and I straight up asked him, I said, what has it been like to have guys under the age, 2 players under the age of 22 just blossoming into superstars? Of course, speaking on Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley, and he said, yeah, it's incredible. He said they are already big-time players who come through in big moments. And you're seeing that time and again. I think, while Clayton Keller has been the most productive player for this team, and he's certainly stepped up in key moments as well, I think that Guenther and Cooley are already approaching kind of the taking the reins, if you will, for this team. I think Guenther has 7 game winners this season. Cooley has over 40 points. His production is up heavily. They're phenomenal. I think they're young stars. I think give it another year or two, they're going to be, legitimate bona fide stars, and give it 3 or 4 seasons, and these might be 2 superstars in the National Hockey League. So it's incredible what these two are doing, especially when you consider the fact that Dylan Guenther was battling for a roster spot last year in Arizona. Like, he didn't even play this is his first full season in the NHL. And Logan Cooley, this is just his second full season in the NHL, both under the age of 22. Utah is blessed with 2 fantastic, phenomenally talented, young stars. And there's not very many teams that could say that. So it's a big deal to have these 2 playing for Utah.
What should we expect, the Utah community? What should we expect here in this first year of the playoff push? And this is getting exciting. We're we've understand basketball and how that happens, and towards the tail end of a hockey season, as we do that, what should Utah fans kind of expect?
Desperation. I've paid attention to the National Hockey League for the majority of my life, and I think there's a big difference between the NBA and the NHL in terms of, the battle to get into the playoffs. I feel like a lot of the times in the NBA, most of those playoff teams really separate themselves. And I think it usually comes down to, 1 spot, maybe 2 spots where, if you look at the wild card race right now, in the West, you've got about 6 or 7 teams within 10 points of each other, and it's mostly the second wild card spot. Vancouver has 63, and then you go down 4 spots, and Anaheim has 57. Seattle has 54. So this is a very tight race. Calgary is just a point behind Vancouver. Utah's 3 points behind Calgary. St. Louis is a point behind Utah, and Anaheim's a point behind St. Louis. Every game, the playoffs start now for these teams. I think you almost get like a pre-playoff type situation where, there's going to be a lot of, these teams play each other a lot. Utah obviously played Vancouver last night. They play them again in 2 weeks. They're going to play Calgary here in a few weeks. They will play St. Louis again. So it's tight. It's desperate. It's high pace. It's urgent. It's incredible. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So, if you've enjoyed the season, thus far, prepare for, even more intensity. Now with that being said, a team can fall out at any point. If you lose 2 or 3 in a row here, you put yourself on that bubble to the point of, the season might be over. So it's going to be intense. Every night is, to the level of a playoff game, and they're going to have to string together a majority of wins with 24 to go.
To your point, Cole, about teams still being alive this time of year in the NHL compared to the NBA, you look in the East, and there's 8 teams that are in the mix for that final wild card spot. They're separated by 7 points. From the Senators all the way down to the Penguins. The Sabres are the only team in the East that are out of it, right? And they're not that far out of it, so you're right. The NHL, somebody can get hot here and make a surprise run, and it could certainly happen for one of these teams, and hopefully it's the Utah Hockey Club. But as we look forward, you look at the schedule. I'm sure you've looked at the schedule quite a bit. Is it favorable for the Utah Hockey Club, or are there going to be some big challenges coming up here shortly that could be roadblocks to them getting closer to the Canucks?
I believe that Utah has the 4th or 5th most favorable schedule coming down the stretch here. So that's positive. I mean, if you look at the next few games, they're playing Chicago tomorrow. That's kind of a gimme game. That's a game that, you're at home. Chicago is not really, fighting for anything here down the stretch. That's a game that you can win. They got to play Minnesota and New Jersey, which are not going to necessarily be super easy games. But if you look over the next month, they're playing Detroit. That's a team they can beat. They're playing Chicago again. Another gimme. They're playing Anaheim. Like I said, there's some matchups here where it's going to be neck and neck. These teams are separated by a matter of 3 or 4 points. So the skill level is very similar. The team makeup is very similar. Then they play Seattle. Then they got to play, Vancouver again and Calgary later. So, yeah, it's definitely favorable. The opportunity is there. this team is going to have a good chance to do it, but it's going to take some magic. You look, there's 24 games to go. They probably need to win about 17 or 18 of those to get it done. So about every five game stretch, they need to win about 3 to 3.5 of those games. So if you're winning 3 out of 5, maybe the fourth or fifth, you're at least taking overtime and getting a point out of it. So the opportunity is there. The team is at 100%. These guys are battling. Most of these guys have not ever been in this situation. The majority of the guys that have been on, that were on the Coyotes for the last couple of years, this is their first chance to really fight, to battle, to have a chance to make a push. Because over the last 4 seasons, they've generally been out of it by this point. So it's exciting. These guys are doing everything that they can. Yeah, it's going to take some magic. It's going to take a little bit of help, but 4 points is not a big difference. That can happen in the span of 4 or 5 days where you make up that ground and suddenly you're in the driver's seat. So we'll see what they can do. But the opportunity is certainly there.
Maybe they could pick up some help along the way. The trade deadline is March 7th. Do you believe that the Utah Hockey Club could be a buyer, a seller, or stand pat?
So I talked to Bill Armstrong about this very subject this week as well. And, his message was that right now they're in between being buyers and sellers. And I think there's 2 points to this. First of all, what he said was, look, we were kind of already buyers over the last 6 months. They went out and they got Sergachev. They went out and they got John Marino. They signed Stenlund. They signed Cole. They traded for Oli Mata. They brought in, Nick DeSimone. So a lot of the buying that they were going to do this season has already been completed. Now, if there is an opportunity that arises where the team can get better. Bill said, hey, we're looking at that all the time. If a certain player or situation arises where we know that we can benefit from it and improve, we're always going to go after that. But I think, and this is just, my own speculation here, and this second point is they're still in this race. If they would have lost last night and they're looking at an 8-point difference between them and any potential playoff hopes, you might start to see things change. You might start to see them becoming sellers, but they're still in it. And so I think right now they're still in that mindset of, well, there's about 10, 11 days to the trade deadline. We're still in the fight. Let's just kind of play it as it goes and see what happens. So I would say right now they're probably still in that middle, that middle ground of, well, do we buy or do we sell? Well, let's see how these next 3 or 4 games go. If they can continue to make up ground, if they can stay in the fight, they're probably just going to sit and roll with the team that they have. I know that they like the way that the team is made up. They are, impressed by the Logan Cooley's and the Dylan Gunthers of the world, and the additions that they've made, the Oli Matas, the DeSimones, and now having 2 more premier defensemen in Dursey and Marino back on that blue line. This team's as good as they've been all year. So let's kind of see how it goes from there.
If you're a fan of hockey, if you're a fan of the NHL, if you're a fan of the Utah Hockey Club, you need to follow Cole and his coverage. He's absolutely killing it on the beat. It's great to hear him every Monday here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone on JJ and Alex. Cole, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And we'll continue to follow this story as it develops, but this has been a fun ride. We appreciate you taking us on it. Yeah, absolutely. Always an honor to speak with the both of you, and looking forward to our conversations every week. And yeah, it's something different every week, right? We'll see how the next 7 days go, and we'll check back in next week. Excellent. That's Cole Bagley, Utah Hockey Club insider for KSLSports.com. I will mention that he is brought to you by, Cole's got his own sponsor. Woo! He's brought to you by Hercules First Federal Credit Union. Our friends at Hercules First Federal Credit Union, growing stronger together. Alex, we have some tickets to give away. You want me to pull the trigger on that right now? Whoa! Let's go. We got tickets. These are Utah Jazz tickets. We can do in the 12-caller thing right now. How many? How many are we giving away?
A 4-pack. Just
a 4-pack. All right. Is that to tonight's game?
That is to Wednesday's game.
Wednesday's game. All right. Be the 12th caller right now. To get those tickets. 801-575-ZONE. You get a 4-pack of tickets to the Jazz Kings on Wednesday, the 26th. Do it right now. Caller 12, 801-575-ZONE. and we'll hook you up with 4-pack of tickets if you are the lucky caller 12. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, it's the NFL Blitz. A lot of stories going on. The Combine's coming up soon. We'll get into that and more next on JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All the latest news and notes from the league and the locals in the NFL. JJ and Alex bring you the NFL Blitz on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
That magical sound lets you know it's time once again for the NFL Blitz each and every day here on JJ and Alex. And we got the perfect guy to join me for this, former NFL player, Steven Sylvester. When I call you Steve?
Only when I'm in trouble.
What the heck was that? Is that what your mom calls you?
Oh, yeah. Steve, get in here. No.
You're not in trouble.
Yeah, all right, great.
We're happy to have you here. Sly's here to discuss the NFL, the latest on what's going on. It's a big week, Sly. You know, it's Combine week. Combine's coming. Let's hit some Combine stories first because it's interesting. You see guys not working out at the Combine.
Right.
So Shedeur Sanders won't work out for teams at the Combine. He's not the only one. Ashton Genty will not work out at the Combine. Mm-hmm. Do you have an opinion on this?
I'm kind of indifferent.
Okay.
Right? Like
that's not an opinion.
Right. Because one, I always think about it as like there's got to be reasons.
Yeah.
And some guys like I know there's some guys who like feel like I'm too good to do the Combine. I know I'm good. I'm a top 10 pick. I'm a first round,
right.
Whatever. Right. But like, I mean, you get guys like DK Metcalf, Saquon Barkley, like they know they're good, but they still worked out. Right. And so like there's a competitive level with that. And then there's the other part. Now, if you're nursing injuries, you don't want to show certain things like we talked about Abdul Carter. He's not gonna perform either. But
he's got a shoulder injury. I get that.
Right. But like there's some guys. Why not? What are you doing? I don't get that. And so that's me, but that's my competitive nature. I was never a first-round pick, so I can't speak to what going through their minds at this point right now. But at the same time, you know, they're maybe making room for other guys to make a splash, right? That they're not going to take all the attention from the Combine, so which sucks. They're not going to be performing at the Combine, but all the highlights you're going to see is talking about Shedeur, talking about Cam Ward, talking about Ashton Genty, and they're not even doing nothing there versus the guys that are.
Let me ask you this question then. For these guys that are going to go in the first round, and you mentioned all three of those guys you mentioned are going to go in the first round.
Right.
Genty's going to be the first running back. Shedeur's probably the second quarterback after Cam Ward. Mm-hmm. And Abdul Carter's probably the number one overall pick.
Beast. I love Abdul Carter.
Yeah, and for good reason. I would take him number one as well.
Right.
I would not touch the quarterbacks at number one. I would take Abdul Carter. That guy's going to help you win football games for sure. But is there greater risk for those guys in working out of the Combine than not? Like, what do they have to gain by competing and working out? What would they have to lose if they did? That helps me understand how I feel about it.
Here's the thing.
And I ask you because you played in the league and
right.
you understand what's going on at the Combine.
For me and those guys, why are we even doing NBA All-Star Weekend?
So same thing with the Combine?
Same thing. If you're the best, show you the best. That's why people watch. That's why people want to watch. It's
right.
why you've known about the Combine since you were a kid. The best athletes are supposed to be at the Combine. The Combine has a name because the best athletes come through there. Deion Sanders, Matthew Stafford, all these guys have come through the Combine and performed, right? And so that's what the understanding of the Combine should be. And if that's the case, nobody who has a first-round grade should ever do the Combine, if that's the case, right? Like, why are we even spending 4 or 5 days, millions of dollars on marketing and advertisement to do the Combine? Why are we even do that? Just go straight to pro days. Like, there's no reason.
Well, if you're Shedeur Sanders, why do pro day?
He doesn't have to, right? I mean, he's got a name, which is
he's going to be a top 10 pick.
That's half the battle.
He'll be the second
having a name. Right? And so, like, for me, like, looking at Shedeur Sanders, I think he's going to be a great quarterback. But he needs to develop a lot. Now, his mind, his confidence in himself, he's not going to tell you that he needs to. And that's where I think Shedeur Sanders might fail. But like, if he gets time to develop, understands the game from a veteran, and does this, it doesn't feel like he needs to be Rookie of the Year XYZ. Unlike Anthony Richards, who failed tremendously these past few years.
Yeah.
Like, if he has time to develop, he can become more complete and understand the game of football, the speed, the NFL level is what I think of Shedeur. I think he's first round worthy, but I think he needs some years to develop. I don't get it. I think the best guys should be there often. If you're say you do something that hurts you, the better teams are drafted later. If I fall in the draft, good for me. I could go to a better team. I don't know. For me, I would tell these guys that they need to work out. But again, it's like, why are none of the guys performing at the All-Star game? Everybody's ripping on LeBron James, but nobody talked about Giannis Antetokounmpo not playing. Right? Like, I mean, but like the best guys are supposed to play, and they're out there jogging around doing this and that because like, I don't want to get hurt. Compete. And that's just my impression of it. And if you're the best, you're supposed to be at the Combine.
You can watch the Combine starting Thursday with defensive linemen and linebackers, and that will continue through the weekend. Let's move on to another hot topic in the NFL Blitz, and that is Matthew Stafford. So where there's smoke, there's fire, and it's clear that the Rams are thinking about moving off of Stafford, which is interesting in its own right. But the Giants, Steelers, Browns, and Raiders have shown interest in Matthew Stafford. The Rams let Stafford's agent talk to teams and gauge value. I don't know. The Rams were so close to going to the Super Bowl this year. I mean, they gave the Eagles their best game of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Why now are they trying to get off of Stafford? Is it money? Is it time to move on? I guess I don't understand why they're doing this. Maybe that's all, and maybe they just see the slippage. I don't know. What are you seeing here?
I mean, I think you see an opportunity where a guy does have value, and we can pick it up. But Matthew Stafford, to me, maybe only has a couple more years.
Sure.
Right? And if you can get good value for him, it's good. You've seen they move off Cooper Kupp. Right? And so you can see that the Rams are trying to do something like, okay, I'm looking at more of the future. We did win the Super Bowl here, 4 years ago. I can rebuild right now. We have a young Puka Nacua. We have an outstandingly young defense.
That defense is for
young,
real.
But for real, as you said, right? Okay, we can value some of these other positions. Get these old guys out, especially if they have value. Get draft capital. Get some younger free agents in here that we can. That's honestly what, a $55 million salary cap hit if getting rid of Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
And so, like, I see them making moves towards the future with this. If they can get a younger quarterback in here to make some things happen, whether they even, like, this isn't a great quarterback draft, but like, say they hold out. Say they pick up Sam Darnold in free agency, right? That can handle a year or two. There's going to be another great quarterback that's going to come out here in the next couple of years that, or maybe they can draft a great quarterback late, like a Tom Brady late, right? You can get a quarterback late just based off of your recruiting capabilities and who's going to fit in your system. That's one thing that I can say that the Rams do know with Sean McVay. They know what's going to work for their system. If you hear them talk the way they talked about Puka Nacua, and they knew exactly what they were going to get from him because we can use this guy this way. He's going to be great. If they can do that at the quarterback position and get a later round draft pick like a Jackson Dart or somebody else, and that just goes to their grading and their ability. But if you can get capital for Stafford right now, do that.
Jackson Dart and Puka Nacua on the same team. Sign me up. I like that. Giants, Steelers, Browns, or Raiders, which one should go after Matthew Stafford?
All of them. All of them, right?
Which one would be the better fit?
I mean, better fit for where? All of them are great. You're
a Steeler guy.
Yeah,
better than Aaron Rodgers.
Here's my hands down. I can't. Just don't. Matthew Stafford doesn't bring drama except his wife to your team. So I go for Matthew Stafford. He's a leader. He's a tough guy. He's a good guy for Pittsburgh. He can throw the ball. He runs. He's tough. He takes a lot of beatings, and he's in there very Ben Roethlisberger-esque. And he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Absolutely awesome. Big guy. He can make a big arm, do a lot of things, get another couple young receivers. George Pickens would absolutely love a Matthew Stafford. The professionalism that you bring in your locker room, great. The best fit probably was with Pete Carroll in Oakland or in Las Vegas.
Interesting.
I hate the Raiders, but that just makes all the sense in the world. If you can get Pete Carroll to work on the rest of the culture in there and you have a veteran quarterback that can handle that offense, whatever offensive coordinator comes in, and bring more professionalism into that position group that you don't have to worry about, the best is definitely the Raiders. Giants and Browns, they'll take anybody. So, yeah, of course. But Steelers, Raiders are great. I think the Raiders would be even better.
Stafford and Malik Neighbors with the Giants is very intriguing to me. But I think you nailed it. The Raiders make the most sense.
Yeah.
They're in a division where they probably want to feel like they're winning now. You got a 70-year-old plus coach that probably they want to feel like they're winning now, and in one of the most competitive divisions in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to do any of what we just said without a stud quarterback.
Right.
Matthew Stafford, if he has any gas left in the tank, could provide that for the Raiders. That seems like the best fit for me. I don't know if I think the Steelers should just go with Justin Fields and call it a day.
I've been saying that for months. I love it. You gotta
go young at the quarterback position. You've brought him in. Just go with it, man.
Just go with it. I think you can draft another quarterback later and develop those guys. But Justin Fields is.
They don't need another old head in Pittsburgh.
No, they don't. And Justin Fields is young. He's got great legs, and he wins you football games. Pittsburgh wins games.
He hasn't won a lot of football games yet.
I mean, he was undefeated this year as a starter.
Fair.
Right? And so, and that's because he was coupled with a great defense, great complementary football, right? He took care of the football. He didn't throw for a ton of yards, but he took care of it, and they won games, got in a field goal position because you had an outstanding kicker, and you won games. That's Steeler football. And so I would give the keys to Justin Fields and not let him have to worry about something over his shoulder.
We're all dying to know who's going to let Russ cook, but that's a topic for another day. We'll save that for another NFL Blitz. That's another guy.
Come on, Pete Carroll, get your Russ back.
It's clear the Raiders are going to go get a vet quarterback.
Right.
Is it Stafford or is it Russell Wilson? We will have to wait and see. That is your NFL Blitz on this Monday. Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by our friends at Hercules First Federal Credit Union and our friends at Beehive Meals. Made some Beehive Meals over the weekend. They're excellent. Give them a shot. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Sucks to Be You next on JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Basking in the sports misfortune of others to help make you feel just a little bit better about yourself. As JJ and Alex present...
Yes, we got beat. We got beat badly.
It Sucks to Be You.
That's right. It's Monday, and everything sucks today. Why? Because we had to go back to work today. You had to go back to school today. We're all working. We're all grinding. We're all in the same boat here. JJ and Alex, 97.5 DKSL Sports Zone. JJ and Sly with you. As we continue on this show, it does suck to be you, but we're going to try to make it better right now. Let's give away a pair of tickets. That's going to make things better, right? Caller number 12 at 801-575-ZONE wins a pair of tickets to see the Utah Hockey Club take on the Chicago Blackhawks on Tuesday, February 25th at Delta Center. Checks, notes, and calendar. That is Tuesday night. That should be a dub for the Utah Hockey Club. Of course, they got that big win over the Vancouver Canucks last night that's got them 2 points closer to that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. Sly, the Utah Hockey Club has hope. They do not suck. It does not suck to be them today. If they wouldn't have got that win, they would have led this segment. But we all know what's going to lead it, Sly. It's been a hot topic today. We've been talking about it already. And if you have not heard and you're just joining us on the show as you start your drive home, Utah basketball has parted ways with head coach Craig Smith. There's going to be new leadership coming to the Utah basketball program. Look, Craig Smith's a great guy. I like him. Got to talk to him and meet him at Utah State when he was coaching there, and he did amazing stuff in Logan. But for whatever reason, Sly, as we've talked about it today, it just did not work at Utah. It's a different beast.
As we've been talking about, it's what can you do for me lately, or what have you done for me lately? And it's just not pretty, especially with the climate of college sports in general. You gotta put up every single year, and we just haven't seen that the last couple of years. And it's hard. It's hard to do that at the University of Utah, especially going into a new conference, all the different intangibles and everything. And Craig Smith just wasn't getting the job done.
Not good enough, and you have to do some hard things and make tough decisions if you're an athletic director, and I'm sure that the boosters had some insight or played a role in this, and that's the result. So Craig Smith is no longer the head coach of the Utah Runnin' Utes. Sly, you threw this in there. Rams and Matthew Stafford. Why does it suck to be the Rams and Matthew Stafford today?
You know what? I'm confused. I don't know if it does. Because, one, I don't know exactly what they're going to do, whether, you want to, go for the future. You got a really young roster with receivers and other. You get rid of Cooper Kupp. Now you're getting rid of Matthew Stafford. What are you guys doing over there? And are you guys going to make the right move, right? Is, like you're talking about salary cap hit, is that worth the hit? Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback. I mean, you've seen multiple people talk about it, even since the playoff. They were 2 plays away from getting to the NFC Championship game. And they would have did their thing against the Commanders, I believe. So you just never know. I don't know exactly what they'll do, but hey, there's other quarterbacks out there that could do the job. I think if they can get a Sam Darnold or another quarterback, they may be able to fill for cheaper, but I don't know. But if they don't make the right moves, it does suck to be the Rams.
Yeah, that's a weird situation where they're either a contender or really bad, like overnight. Cooper Kupp's moving on. You've got a great receiver in Puka Nacua. That defense is legit. I mean, like you said, they almost beat the Eagles in the snow in that divisional playoff game. So the Rams feel like they're close, yet they could be so far away if they lose Matthew Stafford. The tush push. Packers are trying to ban the tush push. Sucks to be the tush push today. Nobody likes the tush push except people in Philly. I hate it. I think it should go away too. It's like rugby out there. What are they doing?
Honestly,
guys are going to get their
I gotta
neck broken
love hate
because of
for
this.
it.
Okay.
I gotta love hate for it. One, it's a great advantage. Two, it's like, what are we gonna do? Right? Because, like, one, we have to wait for the snap to be counted. You can do, like, you've seen Jalen Hurts, especially against, was it the Commanders? Yeah, in the NFC Championship where he jumped off sides so many times. Yeah. And so I'm like, you can do that. You penalize the defense for doing all that. It's so hard to defend, and so it is an advantage at that point. But, like, on the other side of it, it does suck. It's like it's guaranteed money. No, whether it's Jason Kelsey in there or somebody else is in there, they get it done, especially if you do it the right way. Trying to get them not to do it, I just find better ways to defend it, right? And it's hard. Jalen Hurts, squats 700 pounds.
He's strong.
So aside from somebody pushing him and the O-line wedging like the rugby style, that is so hard to defend. So I could see why other teams would hate it.
Arizona basketball fans, sucks to be you today. Not only did your team lose, probably on a questionable call. We've talked about that already today. But you had to get a little loose at the end. You had to say something you probably shouldn't have said, right? I mean, we don't need to bring religion into this loss. Chanting F the Mormons, not cool. Come on, Arizona fans, be better. Well, a lot of people don't think they're better. So maybe that's just who they are. But another fan base that has had to write an apology from their athletic director to the BYU Athletics Department. It's a growing list, and it's quite an impressive list.
It's part of the deal, AD. Get with it. Everybody who plays BYU, I think it was in Oregon in the football team a couple years ago, right?
Yes.
And so it's part of the, you got to understand, if you want your fans to be
Providence
in it.
earlier this year.
Yeah. It's something that shouldn't happen.
Providence, you won that game by 20.
Right. Yeah, so just nuts.
All right, sucks to be you, Arizona fans. LA Clippers, you say it sucks to be the Clippers.
It does. You got Ben Simmons, you got freaking Kawhi Leonard who plays 10, 15 games a year, and that's both of those guys are around $90 to $100 million on your salary cap, and they do nothing for you.
Yeah.
And so they suck. And all you got is you're running James Harden into the ground. You get rid of Paul George a little while ago. You got Norman Powell, but like, where's the consistency there, right? And so, like, will you ever be competitive even with this high roster and you got crappy people around you, man? You got a great new arena. The Intuit Arena, which is absolutely terrific. But, like, you got to get guys out of play. So I say you got to get rid of Kawhi Leonard because even when he does play, he's not even playing the full season. So when's the last time he made it an all-pro? Simply because he can't even play enough games to qualify.
He's just at that point in his career where he's too injured. I think it sucks to be the Sixers right now. You're going to miss the playoffs, and Embiid is probably going to miss some time now again. Sucks to be the IU Indianapolis basketball team bus. It set fire on this weekend. on Sunday. All this team and staff members were safely evacuated from the bus. Apparently, it had a mechanical issue near Kent, Indiana. The Jags were traveling home following a loss at Northern Kentucky. So their bus caught fire on Interstate 275. Sucks to be that bus.
Was it the same bus Bobby Knight was using?
Rest in peace, Bobby
how
Knight.
did your bus get on fire? That's insane.
IU Indianapolis, not IU PUI, by the way. Just IU Indianapolis. Not even the Hoosiers. IU Indianapolis. Yeah. And the Jazz tank. Come on, guys. You're supposed to be losing games. What are you winning games for? Jazz back at it tonight. We'll have more talk on that in the 5 o'clock hour as we approach tip-off coming up here shortly. We got to take a short break. When we come back, Steve Bartle will join us. We'll continue to discuss this Craig Smith situation. Why the timing? Why did it happen now? And who are some of the names that could be on that coaching search list? Bartle's got a list. Can't wait to hear it next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Your home for the best coverage of the Jazz, Utes, and Cougars is right here on The Zone. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Covering the Utes better than anyone else, this is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back, JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We roll into the 5 o'clock hour. Thanks for joining us. Whether you're in your car, at work, at school, wherever you might be, we appreciate you listening to this show each and every day. Right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jeremiah Jensen, joined with Steven Sylvester, filling in for Alex Kirry, who was out today, and also tomorrow. So Sly will be back tomorrow as well.
Let's do it.
We got a lot to do, a lot to talk about, and obviously we had some breaking news this afternoon. A little unorthodox timing-wise. Not surprised that it's happening, but very surprised with the timing with 4 games left in the regular season. But Craig Smith is out as head coach of the Utah men's basketball program in his 4th season. The program was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 this year. They've been in the middle of the pack, but I don't think this is a decision made because of one game or one moment or anything. This is a decision they came to a conclusion that this is not going to be the future of their program. And we'll find out more details on why this had to happen now. Coming up next, Steve Bartle's going to join us. It's brought to you by G2G Bars with all natural ingredients, no preservatives, and plenty of protein. G2G Bars are perfect for anyone who needs a tasty and nutritious boost. Craig Smith out as head coach of Utah men's basketball is the cut at 5 o'clock.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This segment also brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Give Trajan Wealth a call today, your local financial fiduciary, 801-899-7600, or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. Mondays are hard, but they've been especially difficult today for Steve Bartle, who's had to work extra hard because of some surprising breaking news we heard today. Steve, you're grinding. We appreciate you joining us. How are you doing?
Good, man. It's days like today that just give you life.
Steve, there's better ways to get life than breaking news, but we love it in this business, don't we? Did you wake up this morning thinking you were going to have to write that headline?
I did not wake up thinking that would be something, but it wasn't shortly thereafter that I got a couple texts that said something could be coming later today. And so, you know, it's interesting talking about this decision. And, you know, there's a lot of criticism from a national perspective, given the fact that Utah has exceeded, you know, expectations of what they were believed to be capable of doing in the Big 12, picked 16th preseason. They're currently sitting 9th and, you know, have a couple opportunities to add to their win total. And so from a national perspective, this is generating some criticism, but I think as you hone in here more locally, and as I've talked to folks, this is something that has been brewing for quite some time. This is not a decision that they made, you know, out of it wasn't an abrupt decision. I think this has been something that Mark Harlan and the other people involved in that decision-making process have stewed over for quite some time. And there's a lot of things that probably won't get talked about from a national perspective as reasons why Craig was let go. But I do know that there's a lot of there were a lot, behind the scenes, there was just a lot going on there and also not a lot going on there. And I think, specifically to Craig, relationships deteriorated over time, important relationships that, for a head coach in today's basketball world, it's important to maintain relationships with people that support the program, and those deteriorated over time. And then, I know that the alumni and basketball players that have come through the program over the years and years past, that there was never really a great relationship between them and former players. And those are all things that I think have come to a head for Utah in this decision. And I think, when you factor those things in, combined with just sort of the inconsistency that Craig's teams have always seemed to have, they've added a nice couple big wins, but then they fall on their face against programs that you think they should be able to take care of business with. All of that culminated into today's decision for Utah to make the change. And I think, you don't make this change unless you have, inkling or a pretty good idea, at least, of where you want to go next. I think Utah is pretty determined to bring somebody in that they feel will help them elevate the ceiling of the program. I think Craig provided a good idea of what the floor can be coming into the Big 12 and being as competitive as they were. But I think there was just a lot of doubt about his ability to get Utah where they want to be. And I think expectations with a move like this are going to change and are going to have the bar raised moving forward. And I think that's an important thing for Utah basketball. So, this is a big change, a surprising one to say the least. And I think for Utah, getting the right guy in the building can do a lot to kind of change the vibes around the program.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, man. I was kind of perplexed about the timing as well, right? Maybe you can shed some light on that, if you put your managerial hat on, or maybe your managerial conversations. What is behind the timing? There's 4 games left in the season. I know there was rumblings about moving on from him even before the season had started. You're not at the bottom of the conference where you were projected to. You still have a winning record. What is behind the firing at this point in the season?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing that everybody is I don't want to say getting hung up on, but I think everybody is curious as to why now, right? With 4 games left, the Big 12 tournament, you just beat Kansas and Kansas State. And I think for Mark Harlan and the people involved in the decision-making process and the future of the program and those that support the program, I think if you already felt that Craig was not going to be the guy that could help you become a perennial contender in the Big 12 conference, that you essentially, if Craig Smith were to add a couple more wins, it makes it much more difficult to let him go in the offseason. And so I think that was certainly something that factored into this, there's what's the word I'm looking for? Just the belief in him beyond this season. I just don't think it was that great. And I think, I can't say exactly when the decision was made that Utah was going to part ways, but this was not something that they've come to recently from what I've gathered. I believe that this was something that they felt they were going to do, and it was going to take a pretty big season in terms of Utah coming into the Big 12 and getting a lot of signature wins. I think it was going to take something pretty significant for Craig this season to secure his future at Utah basketball. And that hasn't been the case this season. So I think with the loss to UCF and the manner in which Utah lost the game with 19 turnovers, and that's just been a consistent issue this season and in years past that has not been addressed. I think coming off of that loss, I think it was just the moment that Harlan felt was the right time to make that decision to avoid any further headache, I guess would be the word, with Craig potentially getting hot late in the season and adding a few more wins, because we've already seen the criticism that Utah has received for letting him go now with coming off of, the Kansas and Kansas State wins, right? And so if he were to add, another win against Arizona or BYU, it just makes it that much more difficult to make a change. And if you believe that a change is necessary, I think it was the right time for Utah to make this move. So it's an unfortunate situation. I like Craig a lot. He's always been great to interact with. I think he's a good coach. I think there are certainly things that he can work on and improve and become an even greater coach. But I do think there's a lot of potential for Utah basketball, and I think making a move now, as difficult as it may seem and as much criticism as the move is going to receive, I think if Utah plays their cards right, they get the right guy in there, that this will ultimately be to Utah's greater benefit in the immediate and distant future.
All right, let's talk about who that guy is going to be. If you go to KSLSports.com right now, Steve's already on it. He's got his Utah basketball head coach big board, potential targets 1.0. Run us through some of the guys that you think are at the top of their list. They obviously have a plan, and like you say, I believe you're right. The timing has something to do with, A, the fact that they got the buyout secured, and B, they know where they're going here. So who are they leaning?
Yeah, just, initial indications, with this move point to Alex Jensen being the top guy for Utah. And when you consider the history here between Alex Jensen and Utah, right, we know the last time that there was an opening at Utah just a few years ago, Alex Jensen was a part of that process. We can, he was offered the job. He wasn't offered the job. I don't know exactly, but Alex just wasn't in a situation that he felt wasn't in a place where he felt he could take the job. And at that time he was with the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz were playing great basketball, and he was the top assistant for Quinn Snyder, and it seemed like things were trending in the right direction for him to potentially earn a head coaching gig, if not at Utah, somewhere else. And so as the years have gone by, the last few years, I think Alex Jensen is in a different situation, being with the Dallas Mavericks, where this could potentially make a lot of sense for Alex to come home to Salt Lake City and for Utah to make him the guy. And I think there's a lot of motivation from supporters of the program to bring Alex in, and so we'll see if that's what ends up happening. But I think Alex Jensen, just based on what I've gathered so far, I think he's the leading candidate. And how quickly this all comes together, we'll soon find out. But I do think Utah would like to get him potentially hired if obviously things go well and the interviews and all that stuff and all of that. But I think he's the leading candidate. Behind him, Andre Miller, he's going to be an interesting one. So he's been coaching with the Grand Rapids in the G League, and I know that I have him listed on the head coaching board. And while he certainly could be a candidate, I think he's also an option to become an assistant coach at Utah basketball, regardless of who the head coach is. So, he is going to be someone to keep an eye on, regardless of who is hired as head coach. He could be the head coach, but I don't think that's as likely. I think an ideal situation for Utah, grand slam situation for Utah, you're able to bring in Alex Jensen and Andre Miller together. How doable is that? I don't know exactly, but I know that there's a lot of hope and a lot of optimism that that can be the move. beyond those two, there's a lot of really good candidates for Utah to consider. A couple names that I really like in particular, Bryce Drew at Grand Canyon University. He's done a great job of turning that program into a contender. Grand Canyon University it's a small program, but he's recruited some really good talent to that program. Being there in Phoenix in that area, he has a lot of connections throughout that area, which is, it's a pretty strong basketball community. So you would have access to talent there. He's developed a really good program on the floor, both offensively and defensively. So he's a guy that I really like. And Richard Pitino at New Mexico, I think would be an excellent option for Utah. He's coached at the Power 5 level, with Minnesota previously. Things didn't finish well there for him, but he's really revitalized his career at New Mexico. And when you look at what he's done, he's recruited well. He's retained good pieces there at New Mexico, and he's turned them into a top contender in the Mountain West Conference. And with that Pitino name, that would certainly garner a lot of excitement from the fan base. So those are probably the four names that I look at first and foremost, and then there's a number of other options that we can get into if you want. But those are probably the big names to pay attention to.
Yeah, those are all really, really great names that you pointed out. We had Josh Grant on earlier, and he was advocating for Alex Jensen as well. But it takes two to tango in this situation. Is there, that you've heard, is there any pushback? Is Alex Jensen even interested in something like this? Or are we just spitballing names in hope? So we know Andre Miller, Alex Jensen, Rick Pitino. Would those be anything where these guys wouldn't come or wouldn't even do interviews?
Yeah, no, I do think I know that there's interest with Andre Miller coming into the program. Mm-hmm. I know that he was willing to join Craig Smith's staff last year, but it just didn't work out. Craig Smith hired a couple of his guys, and that's what ended up happening there with Andre. So I know that there's interest there. With Alex Jensen, I think it's important to understand that he's in a much different situation now than he was a couple years ago when he was with the Utah Jazz. And I think one guy, with the zone, Scott Gerard, has a great relationship with him. And, he mentioned earlier today, I was on with them earlier today, and he mentioned that he believes Alex is in a different place, personally. And so I think there's certainly reasons to be optimistic that, there are actually legs to this. And based on what I've gathered, I do think, we'll see some movement here pretty soon between Utah and Alex Jensen, and we'll learn pretty quickly, how interested Alex might be in the job. I do think, just based on what I've heard, that there is mutual interest, and so it'll be up to Utah to get the job done.
One name that wasn't on the list, I noticed, Johnny Bryant, you did not include on the list. Was there a reason for that, or is it just so far down the list, and with him being in the NBA, you just didn't think it was that strong of a possibility?
Yeah, I think so. With a couple of the updates, Johnny Bryant was actually one of them, and I've heard that there was a call between Utah and Johnny Bryant, and it sounds like Johnny is pretty focused on remaining in the NBA, which is great for him. He's in a great situation, and so I think that one is just it's essentially where Alex Jensen was a couple years ago. He's trending really well in the NBA, and I think he's focused on staying there, and so that's where that's at. That's why I didn't include Johnny.
No, makes a lot of sense, and I think Utah fans would want clarity on that if they're reading. They see him on a list. Like, why isn't Johnny Bryant on the list? Well, Bartle's got you covered. Bartle's got some inside info on that one. So there you go. Just overall thought, basketball at a whole at Utah. This is the last one I have for you, Steve. I'm older than you. I'm 47. I remember when Utah was basically a blue blood in this sport. Back in the 90s, my goodness. I mean, they were in the tournament every year. They won games every year under Majerus. They've been to Final Fours, multiple. Like, this program should be in the top 25 every year, and it hasn't been for the last 20 years with a few exceptions. 9 straight years without an NCAA tournament. Can this be done? Can somebody like Alex Jensen come in here and revive the glory days? What is it going to take to get Utah back to what it used to be?
Yeah, I think Alex is somebody that is capable of reigniting some passion around the program, and I think that is something that's been missing. When you look in the Big 12 and you see the fan bases that come out and support their teams, and you can look none further than 50 miles south of Provo with what BYU has going on, the impact that a strong fan base can have. And I think that's been something that has been a missing element. And so I think with Utah, right, getting something done that can reignite that passion will have a huge impact on the future of the program. And I think getting somebody in there that can capitalize on that and build for the future and turn Utah into a perennial contender, I think that is sort of what this move is indicating, is that, even with Utah ending up ninth, there's currently ninth in the Big 12, Craig Smith has shown that, Utah can be competitive in this league with minimal support around him. I think the hope and belief is that with the right hires, that it reignites the passion and gets greater support, draws greater support from the fan base and from those that support the program, and that Utah can become a top contender in the Big 12 conference. When you think of the Big 12, you think of Kansas and Baylor, Texas Tech, programs that have won national championships in this league, and you think, well, we were this good with minimal support. If we can get the right guy in there, I think we can raise the bar here at Utah. And I think that's kind of the hope and focus. And with what BYU has done, bringing in Kevin Young, who was a very good assistant coach in the NBA, a long-time assistant coach, with what he's done with BYU, I think that's been a reason for motivation, or that's been motivation to make this Alex Jensen thing become a thing. I think there's a lot of belief that he can do something similar for Utah with that. So I think, I do think Utah can. I think there's a lot of potential for Utah basketball to, take another step or two in this league, that they can be a top half contender in the league, and be a consistent NCAA tournament team. I think that's why you make this move. You raise the expectations for the program, and you work to become a perennial contender. And I think that's the hope and focus for Utah in making this move.
Yeah, Steve, I got one last question, and it's something around all of this, right? It's kind of the big topic around football, around anything in college sports right now with the NIL stuff going around, and how do you be competitive? Say you don't have that billionaire donor, right? Say you don't have like crazy donors, but you do have enough to be resourceful, right? Like, what does that look like? Especially with this day and age and NIL money flying around and possibly getting certain recruits. How do you build a program, develop guys, which is what Utah's normally used or known for, is being able to develop guys into great guys. What does that look like for Utah?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand kind of the competition in the Big 12 with NIL. To compete in the Big 12, with programs that are dumping $2 million into a single player, you just can't expect to compete at a high level when your entire team is right around $2 or $3 million collectively in NIL. And so I think, at a minimum, you've got to raise the floor. You've got to increase that budget, that number for Utah. And I think there's plenty of room to do that. With the support that Utah has. What's going to be interesting, though, is with the changes that are expected to come with the House settlement, how does that actually impact, how teams and programs go about this, right? Where it takes the burden off of supporters and people around the program donating to a collective. It now is going to come directly from the university. And so I think, Utah's obviously got to work their way through that. But I think at a minimum, you've got to look at investing $4 to $5 million in the money that you'll have available into the basketball program if you want to compete at a high level in the Big 12. I've dug around and tried my best to get some numbers, in terms of the NIL and of other programs. In 2023, this is two summers ago, Texas Tech had an NIL number collectively that surpassed $3 million. And so that was 2 years ago when NIL was still in its infancy. Baylor has had a payroll, essentially. I say payroll, but you know what I mean.
What it's becoming.
Same thing. Very fine line, Steve.
Yeah, I know. $4 million very recently. And so, you can imagine that with the increasing amount of money that's being poured into these programs, Kansas and Kansas State were two programs that I was told collectively came in around 15 to 17 million, combined in terms of the amount of money invested in those two programs. Kansas is probably, closer to 10 million, while Kansas State is probably somewhere around 5 to 7. And so, that's what you're competing with. And I do think Utah has room to grow in that sense where you can get a few more boosters opening up. But again, with the House settlement, it's all due to change, and we'll learn, how that all shakes out, over the coming months. But I do think that's sort of where you need to get to, is around $5 million for Utah to be competitive in that world.
Great insight on the news that Craig Smith is out as head coach of the Utah men's basketball program. Steve Bartle, all over it as always. Thanks for joining us, Steve. Appreciate it. And it's one of those long days, but I hope you're enjoying it.
Appreciate you, fellas. Thanks so much for having me on.
Steve Bartle, Utah Utes insider for KSLSports.com. You can go read all of the coverage of this big story on KSLSports.com. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, Jazz Daily, we're going to get you ready for Utah Jazz basketball tonight as they take on the Portland Trailblazers at home. You're listening to JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
You know what's coming. Your daily deep dive into everything Utah Jazz. It's time! All season long and even in the off season. It's Jazz Daily with JJ and Alex on your exclusive home of Utah Jazz basketball. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it! Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it!
Welcome back, JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Give us the ball because we're going to dunk it right now in the Jazz Daily. Jeremiah Jensen, Steven Sylvester with you, and the Jazz play tonight, taking on the Portland Trailblazers. Before we get into the Jazz real quick, we have to give something away. Call in now at 801-575-ZONE with the Chevy Strong Play of the Week to win a $20 Amazon gift card. With an impressive lineup of cars, trucks, and SUVs, it's no wonder that people are switching to Chevy. Rocky Mountain Chevy Dealers, America's fastest-growing full-line brand. Rocky Mountain Chevy Dealers. If you listened to DJ and PK this morning, you know what the drill is. You know why, or what you need to know to be able to win this. So if you do, call in now, 801-575-ZONE, with the Chevy Strong Play of the Week to win that $20 Amazon gift card. All right, the Jazz winning on Saturday against the team they have no business beating, the Houston Rockets. I've been one of the best teams in the West this season, in the top 4 in the West, which is not easy to do. A great young team with a lot of exciting young talent, a team that the Jazz want to become. And the Jazz matched up with them and beat them. In fact, the Rockets now dropped to 5th. They are tied with the Lakers in the win-loss column. Well, they're actually percentage points behind, so that's why they're 5th. But they are both 11.5 games back of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who continue to win and helped the Jazz last night by defeating the Minnesota Timberwolves. But Sly, this Jazz team, we all know the assignment. They're playing for the lottery.
Do they?
They're playing for lottery balls. But some of these players on the team, they're playing for themselves. They're playing for pride, and they're playing for each other. And Keontae George has been really good. And Keontae George, I think, gained a lot of experience and confidence, more importantly, from that All-Star weekend. I know everybody didn't really care for All-Star weekend, but you know who did? Keontae George.
The young stars, yeah.
He helped the Rising Stars, his team, win on Friday night, and then because of that, he was rewarded with being a part of the festivities on Sunday, probably the first and last time that'll ever happen, but he took advantage of it and was a part of it. So Keontae George comes back from the break, and he scores 30 points off the bench to beat the Rockets on Saturday night. Just a terrific performance. So as a Jazz fan, and the Utah Jazz specifically, they're trying to see development out of these young players. And they're not going to lose every game, so don't panic. They're still exactly where they want to be on the Tankathon. But they did get a nice win on Saturday against a playoff contender. But in the process, you're seeing somebody like Keontae George against a really good team score 30 points, Sly, 10 of 17 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3. Free throws not where he wanted to be, 5 of 10, but he also had 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Keontae George, since moving to the bench, has actually gotten better. How about that?
It sucks. This is completely why people you got to understand tanking is just not easy, right? You're telling a competitor to lose. That's just not going to happen or happen easily anyway, especially with guys that you want. Like, one thing that I can see from this, I get a lot of guys that are getting some great playing time, right? And Keontae George is getting crazy experience these last 2 years in making that happen and getting confidence in his game. As you said, the All-Star weekend, you could see him like, man, I'm on the court right now, All-Star weekend. I'm playing against Steph Curry. I'm playing against Kevin Durant in the All-Star game. I deserve to be here. I'm one of these young rising stars, as it's proven that I can be on the stage. And so that translates to things during the regular season and him coming into his own. And if he can have a great offseason this year and, the Jazz get exactly what they're looking for, hopefully, in this lottery pick, I think that the Jazz could end up doing some great things in the future. But, of course, you're letting management and everything kind of determine your future. And that's what's so hard is you're taking guys like Keontae George, you're taking guys like Colin Sexton, and you're telling them to slow down your career so we can develop this team. And that's so hard for guys to do, right? Like Jordan Clarkson, where would he be, if he was on a different team and not on a tanking team? Lauri Markkanen, you got to think about all these guys in the primes of their careers that are having to take a back seat because the Jazz are doing some kind of rebuilding that nobody knows the timeline on. And so that just sucks. And so within that, you might lose some guys along the way that you weren't expecting to lose because they can increase their value or end up wanting to go somewhere else. So, hopefully the Jazz aren't taking forever to do this because you do have young talent on this football team. On this basketball team that can that can make some moves in this NBA, just like the Young Thunder. I think the Jazz could end up being a team that stresses people out in the Western Conference.
You want to see the continued development of these young players, and you saw it on Saturday from Keontae George. Maybe we'll see it from a different player tonight. The Jazz take on the Portland Trailblazers. Tip-off 7 p.m. You're going to hear that game right here on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. The pregame show with Tim and Jake is coming up here at 6 o'clock. We'll lead you up to that with more Jazz coverage next right here on JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Accessing.
When TV and radio collide.
Love it.
Wow. This is what you get. You're listening to JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars.
Don't touch that dial.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back. Quick injury report before we toss it to the Jazz pregame show. Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Colin Sexton, all out tonight. They will not be playing. Jazz pregame show right now with the coach and Jake Scott begins now.